As Prime Minister Justin Trudeau heads to China today, Canada's former top spy raising concerns about a potential free trade pact between the countries.
We have to go in with our eyes open, but realizing that their mindset is entirely different than ours. We go in free trade negotiations with the objective of facilitating the private sector. Right. They're going in with the objective of facilitating the Chinese state meeting its objective.
Peter MacKay says the benefits of increased trade with China must be measured against the real dangers of state-sponsored espionage.
They are heavily involved, heavily engaged in espionage. There isn't a day goes by that our Canadian government departments, our banking system, even our critical infrastructure are not in some way or another being probed and examined, if not hacked. And that has to be a major, major concern in this country.
2 Canadians who were arrested in China in 2018 have been released and are on their way home. Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig were accused of spying. Both denied the charges throughout. They were detained shortly after Canadian police had arrested a top Chinese technology executive, Meng Wanzhou of Huawei, on a US warrant.
Tonight, we intend to exclude Huawei and ZTE from our 5G network, full stop.
Is a need to ensure that we prohibit the installation of their equipment and technology within the 5G network, given the potential risks they pose to national security.
But the other part of this announcement affects 4G networks, and the government is ordering the companies to remove all Huawei equipment from existing networks. They have to be completely replaced by 2027.
Earlier this morning, specifically about it, saying the Department of National Defence and Canadian Armed Forces are fully aware of recent efforts by China to conduct surveillance operations in Canadian airspace and maritime approaches utilizing dual-purpose technologies.
We have a clearer picture tonight about why 2 scientists linked to China were escorted out of Canada's top infectious disease lab right here in Winnipeg in 2019. They were then fired. Hundreds of pages of secret documents were released yesterday.
Now, intelligence assessments also show she and her husband shared infectious viruses and scientific research with China, had a close and clandestine relationship with Chinese officials, and were considered a credible threat to Canada's economic security. The documents also say she lied about her involvement with Chinese government and military programs.
Canadian defense sources tell Global News that a suspected Chinese spy balloon spotted flying over the United States also spent time in Canadian airspace. In a statement, the Department of National Defence says the balloon is being actively monitored by NORAD. Sources say the Canadian military is looking into whether this balloon entered Canadian airspace more than once.
A troubling new report from the RCMP tonight. It's investigating claims of criminal activity at so-called police stations allegedly set up by China.
This kind of practice, China violated other countries' sovereignties, use this kind of overseas service stations to try to get their targets.
The address might be linked with police force operating out of China. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I don't know.
In a statement, the RCMP says it is investigating reports of criminal activity in relation to the so-called police stations. And it goes on to say it takes threats to the security of individuals living in Canada very seriously and is aware that foreign states may seek to intimidate or harm communities or individuals within Canada.
Modern car is really a computer with a motor more than it is a car.
And now with Chinese EVs poised to hit Canadian roads, there are concerns about cybersecurity.
China wants these electric vehicles to be roving surveillance operations on our streets.
I'm concerned about cybersecurity and the threat of China.
Major ports in the U.S. have a Chinese equipment. Well, they discovered hidden in the mechanism a system that is capable to transmit and to capture data.
In 2025, CSIS called China the most active state conducting foreign interference activities in this country.
When it comes to national security, we need to be much more now attentive who we do business with.
The government has summoned China's ambassador as it considers expelling diplomats linked to an alleged threat against Conservative MP Michael Chong and his family.
July 20th, 2021. Did your department receive this intelligence assessment? I was not the Minister for Foreign Affairs. I
understand that, but I'm asking if your department received it. The Prime Minister indicated yesterday that assessment never left CSIS. It seems inexplicable that it would not have left CSIS. Mr. Speaker, I've just been informed by the National Security Advisor that the CSIS intelligence assessment of July 20th, 2021 was sent by CSIS to the relevant departments and to the National Security Advisor in the PCO.
An intelligence report claims that there are members of this House whose loyalty is not solely to the people of Canada, but to foreign governments who wish us harm. Why don't they release the names of MPs who are working against Canada?
Yeah. Canada's election watchdog normally keeps her work confidential, but in a rare move went public, saying she's reviewing complaints Beijing meddled in the past 2 federal elections.
Now, we've dedicated tonight's entire show to discussing foreign interference in Canadian elections, federally and locally. Our next guest was not only allegedly targeted by Beijing in retaliation for criticizing China, but he claims that he lost his seat in Parliament in the 2021 federal election as a result of foreign election interference. And there has been CSIS reports on this. But CSIS has been sounding an alarm ever since that I start paying attention to the foreign interference issue way back in 2011. For example, Richard Fadden, the former CSIS director, had already tabled reports saying that Ontario parliamentarians, Ontario politicians are subject to Russia, Iran, and China's interference.
And strategic competition has gripped the world. And this latest tumult could be considered a contest between freedom and authoritarianism. And it's become the great struggle of our lives. And I think it's going to be certainly for the rest of my life and probably for the rest of your lives as well. And we'll be judged by history and future generations for how we acquit ourselves in these times of trial. The rules-based international order is the legacy that we have inherited. We have fought to preserve it, and that fight goes on with added urgency and uncertainty. We live in a time of accelerated change and upheaval. Strategic geopolitical competition has exploded again into open conflict in Europe and the Middle East, while it smolders in the Asia-Pacific region. China is employing every tool at its disposal: military posturing, coercive diplomacy, malicious cyber activity, espionage, and the theft of intellectual property and sensitive technologies in its effort to replace the rules-based international order with one more to its advantage. It has a well-documented schedule in place. But whatever you want to call them, they are an alliance of adversaries determined to undermine or outright replace the rules-based international order.
Personally, I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
China, you say?
Yeah.
You know, Canada and America have been friends for a long time. And like any sets of friends, we don't always see eye to eye. But when push has come to shove in the past, we've always been there for each other for over, 150 years.
Less than a year ago, you said that China was the biggest security threat to Canada. Do you still believe that?
The security landscape continues to change. And in a world that's more dangerous and divided, we face many threats. That's the reality. And the job, my responsibilities as Prime Minister, the job of the government, is to manage those threats.
For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. And American hegemony, in particular, helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers, to build our strength at home and to act together. That is Canada's path.
And now he's saying, and this morning when he met with Carney, that it was the speech in Davos that really was what swayed him. More conversations with his family who he cited as the original reason why he was going to leave politics. But now he was so moved by Carney's speech in Davos, his ambitious agenda, and this move for national unity that he's decided to stay. Is that convenient reasoning? Do you buy that?
The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is touting a new strategic partnership with China in talks with Xi Jinping in Beijing as part of what he has said is a new world order, in part due to the fallout from Trump tariffs in the United States.
I have been told of university students already being required to read my husband's now quite famous Davos speech, of intergenerational dinner table conversations being sparked by its contents, of new possibilities opening up in its wake, of Canada being the nation that is helping to define and shape a new world order.
The world's changing, not gradually, but suddenly. Yes, some are still in denial. Rather than starting on this journey, they're waiting for the past to return. No. But hope is not a plan, and nostalgia is not a strategy. We can either shape our future with AI or let it control our destiny. The foundations of the international order, the order which Canada helped build and from which we have benefited for so long, that order is crumbling.